بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue where we left off yesterday in covering our understanding of those who contradicted the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, which is that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala exists without a place and without a direction. And one of the things that is well known among the people, they say things are made clear or they are known by their opposites. So when we learn about the attributes of Allah, we learn what is wajib for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we learn these attributes that are obligatory for Allah. And we also learn what is not permissible, what is impossible to attribute to Allah. And learning what is obligatory to attribute to Allah is so that we learn what to believe. Learning what is impossible to attribute to Allah so we would avoid the incorrect belief. And it has been the habit of our scholars, past and present, to not only explain to us al-aqidatu sahiha, the correct creed, so that we would follow it, they would also identify to us al-aqidatu fasida, the correct creed, so that we would know what is the evil that we should avoid. And for us, one of the greatest evils that we're confronted with is innovation in the creed. Innovation in the creed. And what makes that so difficult is that many people, unfortunately, and I would say too many people. So even if too many people does not always equal to most of the people, but too many people are lax in the issues of the creed in terms of explaining the correct creed. And then we have others who explain the correct creed, but use that information to subjugate another group of people. So from our side, we want to explain the correct creed, but use the correct creed to empower those people who are subjugated as well. So we have two objectives. Number one, to explain the correct creed, first and foremost, so that we all have the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And with that, clarify what is the correct creed. Let me explain something to you. And Allah knows best, but I see a lot of our young brothers may be falling into sins or may not be aware that some things are unlawful. I don't particularly know the hip hop artist DMX. Personally, I don't know him, but I know of him. I know of his music. I know of his, and I don't know him to be a Muslim, right? So unless someone knows he's a Muslim and he died on the status of Islam, it is not permissible to ask Allah to forgive him of his sins, or to have mercy on him, or to say rest in peace. That's if he died as a non-Muslim. If you know other than that, then you know I don't know. And by all means, you pray for him if you know that about him. But what I know is that he was not a Muslim. And so therefore it's unlawful to do such. So I would admonish our young brothers who love hip hop music, as I came up loving hip hop too. However, we have rules in our religion, and everything is by the will of Allah. So just be careful. I don't know him, so I can't speak of his actual situation. But what I know is that he was not a Muslim. And if someone knows something different, tell me. But I've never, ever heard anyone say he's a Muslim. Nor I ever heard him say he was a Muslim. So be careful with that. May Allah give us a further understanding of the deen. Care and loving or having compassion, is nothing wrong with that, but don't exceed the bounds, the religious rules. Don't go beyond them. And at the same time, for those who correct people, understand people's love for those who love people in their times of sadness and grief. Console them in the proper way, but don't criticize them. Right? Ayub, I want to be safe to you, just to share, and I don't want to make this the issue of my class. But if you know someone who is not a Muslim, and you say, Allah forgive them, this is kufr, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never forgive someone who dies on the status of kufr, on the status of disbelief, even if they were a good person, even if they were a charitable person. If they die on other than the status of Islam, Allah will never forgive them. So just be careful. May Allah guide us. Subhanallah. Tayyib. So that is the other thing. So the issue of the creed, learning the correct creed, staying steadfast to the correct creed, learning the false creed by learning it so one can avoid it, and taking the creed and uplifting one another. Now, so we talked about the correct creed. Allah mawjudun bila makan wala jiha. That Allah exists without being in a place and not being in a direction. So we were reading yesterday what Ibn Abi al-Izz al-Hanafi mentioned in terms of his explaining the creed of Al-Tahawi, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he cleared Allah from limits, extreme ends, small parts, organs, little parts, and that Allah is not contained by the six directions. Now, so we'll continue with that. Bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him.
Here, difference. When the author said, in this case, what is being said is incorrect, right? So we're quoting, right? Because we don't want to mix it, that what is being said here, it is incorrect. But we're identifying what he said. So we're quoting. And some of the things he said are blasphemous, right? So therefore, we won't mention them as if they're mentioning the truth. We're quoting. The author said these matters. We're not saying it. This is what he mentioned. Now, go ahead.
The author said, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be on him, stated in the famous hadith of intercession, people will come to Adam and say, Allah Ta'ala created you with his hands, commanded the angels to bow to you, and taught you the names of all.
This is perversion for their creed. The author mentioned the hadith of the Prophet. When the people went to Adam, he said, خَلَقَ اللَّهُ بِيَدِهِ. And their creed is that Allah has organs. And that's why it's kufr. This creed is kufr. The hadith said that, the hadith of intercession, that the people would come to Adam and they would say to him, Allah created you with his yad, singular, not two hands, not plural hands. He said yad, right? But their belief is that one hand is deficiency. So therefore he has to have two hands, which is a tashbih, which is likening Allah to the creation. So read what they said again in the translation.
People will come to Adam and say, Allah created you with his hands, commanded the angels to bow to you.
This was intentional, so you understand, because when you read their other books, they say Allah must have two hands, because one hand in the human is a sign of deficiency. So if Allah has one hand, that's deficient. So even though the word, if you literally translated it, Allahu biyadi, it would be one hand if you translate it literally, which is not permissible. But since they think that one hand is deficient, he must have two hands, so they translated the singular word yad to the plural of hands, which is an interpretation of the text from people who say it's not valid to interpret. Do y'all follow what I mean? Did y'all follow that? No. We're not reading from the text you're looking. This is another book. This is another book we're reading from. It's the same basic text, but a commentary by Ibn Abi al-Iz, from which Al-Albany, Bin Baz, Fawzan, from which all the Wahhabi Salafi people take their creed. So did y'all follow that? Was that clear? Maybe for those who come late, we're reading what Ibn Abi al-Iz said about these verses, and we mentioned yesterday what Imam al-Ghaznawi said, and we mentioned some other scholars, and we mentioned the creed of Ahl Sunnah from the Reliance of the Traveler. Now we're clarifying the difference between the two. Right? Okay, go ahead.
Commanded the angels to bow to you, and taught you the names of all things. It is not correct to say that the dual hands here means power, as the words, whom I have created with my two hands.
Yeah. And you'll see this Even it's bad. Even in translating, you can see mindsets, right? Because in the Arabic text, I want to show you. Read that line again. It is not valid.
It is not correct to say that the dual hands here means power, as the
All right,
words
stop. I want you to look at this. I know you don't know Arabic, most of you. Some of you do, though, right? I want you to look there. Can you see? I know it's dark in here, right? Here, right? How can I get it? Here. If you look in here, is that there? Yeah. Up there, it's hard to look backwards. He said, ولا يصح تأويل من قال إن المراد باليد بالقدرة. So here, read that line again. It is not correct to say.
It is not correct to say that the dual hands here means power.
Now
And the
here, if you
words,
look in the Arabic text, to show you the mindset of these mushabbiha, right? The Arabic text says, إن المراد باليد. That's singular, not dual hands. And the word بالقدرة, right? So this is an attribute of a yed. But even in the text, it doesn't say dual hands in the Arabic original, right? But because of their creed is corrupt, they don't believe Allah has one yed. He must have two yeds. And to make this all even in the verse, they're going to translate in a way that is likening Allah to created things and to compare Allah to created things. Now, go ahead.
whom I have created with my two hands, Surah 38, Ayah 75, cannot be understood as whom I have created with my two powers. Otherwise, Iblis could have said to Allah Ta'ala, you had also created me with your power. So Adam would have no superiority over him. Iblis, even with his infidelity, knew Allah Ta'ala better than the Jahmiyyah. Furthermore,
Go ahead.
there is no evidence for them in the statement of Allah Ta'ala. Do they not see that it is we who have created for them, among other things, which our hands have fashioned, cattle, which are under their dominion? Surah 36, Ayah 71. Allah Ta'ala has used hands in the plural because the genitive pronoun, our, whose construct it is
Wait a
also.
minute. No, that's good. I think it's all right. Read that again. Allah
Allah
used
Ta'ala has
full
used
hands. Go ahead.
Allah Ta'ala has used hands in the plural because the genitive pronoun our, whose construct it is also plural. Both underline the dominion and the majesty of Allah Ta'ala. Hands in the plural form has never been used with a singular genitive pronoun, nor has the dual been used with a plural genitive pronoun. Hence the words, which our hands have fashioned, Surah 35, Ayah 71, cannot be compared with the words, whom I have created with my two hands, Surah 38, Ayah 75. The Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, also said about Allah Ta'ala, his veil is light. If he were to remove it, the splendor of his face would burn every creature his eyes would fall upon.
Now, here's the thing, what I want you to understand. A salaf, and that's why these translations of the attributes of Allah are dangerous. Because a salaf would recite the verse as it came, leave it in the Arabic language, right? Not give it an interpretation, and affirm that it's an attribute of Allah. So they don't say every time you have the attributes, they make it plural. So if the word was singular that was used, its meaning is befitting of Allah, so that doesn't even come to their mind, whether it is a hands or hands, yet as an attribute of Allah. Yadayya as an attribute of Allah. They didn't come into the mind to try to imagine and make sure you say even when it's yed, that you make it plural. They don't do that in Arabic at all. If the word was singular, the word is singular. If the word was in a dual form, they left it in a dual form, right? If the word is in plural form, they left words in plural form. They never ever try to alternate words to have a consistent meaning. That's tashbih. Do you understand what I mean? So once you just recite the verse and stop, but you're not doing that. You're reciting the verse, changing the words to what you want it to be to fit your corrupt aqidah. And this is dangerous. This is totally opposite of the Salaf. It is interpretation, which you say that it's not, you don't interpret, but that's what that is. That's ta'wil. Because Allah didn't say that. You said that. You adding words to what was mentioned in the Quran. And not only adding, changing words and the meaning of words that are mentioned in the Quran. This is the essence of what you're running from. Now, go ahead. Now here, so when that is being said, and it'll give you the idea that you'll know what a person's thinking, especially through the translation, because you're giving a meaning to someone. Once you give them that meaning and you change in the actual text you're translating from, that'll let you know what's going on in the belief. And that's why Imam Al-Tahawi said, وَمَنْ وَصَفَ اللَّهَ بِمَعْنٍ مِنْ مَعَانِ الْبَشَرِ فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. Whoever describes Allah with a meaning from among the meanings of the creation that applies to human beings, or a characteristic among the characteristics of human beings, is kufr, has blasphemed. And here's the catch. You're told, like I told you, when we'll read other books of theirs, they'll clearly say that one hand is a deficiency, like in the human beings. So Allah must have two hands. A'udhu billah. That is a comparison and an analogy between the creator and the created. And there is no analogy between the creator and the created. Go ahead.
On the other hand, one does not say about these attributes that they are organs, adah, limbs, jawari, instruments, adwat, or parts, arkan, singular, rukin. For rukin is a part of the essence, mahiyya, and Allah Ta'ala is absolutely one, perfect and indivisible, al-ahad, as-samad. Similarly, organs give the impression of division and differentiation. Allah Ta'ala is exalted above that. This is clear in the verse, who have made the Quran into ideen, shreds. Surah 15, Ayah 91. Ideen is from the root word as adwat. Jawari, limbs, implies the ideal of acquisition and use. Adwat are the instruments which are used for bringing about some good or preventing some evil. All of those meanings are ruled out with respect to Allah Ta'ala. This is the reason none of these words have been used in reference to Allah Ta'ala in the Quran or Sunnah. The words used in the text have correct meanings to them. They are free from any kind of confusion or guile. Therefore, one must not use terms other than the ones used in the text of the Quran or Sunnah when it comes to affirming or negating something about Allah Ta'ala. Otherwise, one may affirm something that is incorrect or negate something which is correct. All of these other terms are vague and can be interpreted in different ways, right as well as wrong.
So here's the refutation of Imam Al-Tahawi. And this is what you always must beware when you're dealing with Wahhabis and Salafis. They have no respect for scholars. Zero. But they'll say, we honor all the scholars. There was none of the scholars who came after the Salaf, even the scholars of the Salaf, who did not use these terms, right? The scholars of the Salaf, you will find them using, like Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa died in the year 150. He was from the Salaf. He was either from the Tabi'een, and they'll negate that, then he was from the Atba'i Tabi'een, the followers of the followers, with no doubt. And he used these terms, that Allah is free of this, free of that. He mentioned them in his books, in his Rasail. And other of the scholars, if you took it to 300, they used these terms. and Imam Abu Ja'far Al-Tahawi, who was a hafiz of hadith, who was a master of fiqh and Quran and all of the Islamic sciences, he used those terms. What does those Wahhabis say? He was wrong in the uses of those terms, and he should have used the terms that Allah and His Messenger used. And this is a problem with the Salafi mindset, is that number one, they don't do that themselves, and nor did the scholars of the Salaf do that. They used to explain what was befitting to Allah and what is not befitting, and all of the terms that they use indicated what was befitting and what is non-befitting. Simple. And then you have primary foundational points in the Quran and the Sunnah, which is لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, for example, that nothing resembles Allah Ta'ala. And the terms they use is to indicate that. So here, this is the way they refute. So they'll say, his terms are brief and obscure, ambiguous, and he shouldn't have used that. And therefore, here is what is really intended. When everyone of Ahl Sunnah besides you, Bin Baz and Ibn Abi al-Iz and others, all of the great scholars, which I'll show you, inshallah, tomorrow and the next day, that they understood these terms with no ambiguity, no obscureness, no confusion. Only y'all came with that. But this is the way they refute every scholar. Al-Bukhari, An-Nawawi, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Al-Tahawi, all the scholars who did figurative interpretation, who didn't follow their literist approach. This is the way they refute all of them. It's called, what some of the scholars said, dwarfs correcting giants or challenging giants. Now,
As for the word jihad,
so you'll find them saying, no matter who it is, we follow the book and the Sunnah. We follow Rasulullah and we follow the Quran. Now that sounds clever, right? But when they say no matter who it is, what it really means, everyone other than us. Because everyone other than us, even the scholars of the Salaf, they didn't follow our approach. So what we do is we negate all of them and all of their understandings and interpretations, and then we say what we understood, we, meaning these handful of scholars that follow this vile creed, what we understood is the intent of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And what they understood, all of the scholars who were of the highest rank, they were all men, and we don't follow men, we follow Quran and Sunnah. But we're going to interpret, our interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah becomes the Quran and Sunnah, and who follow them forget that they are men too. So they are men that you say you don't follow, you follow Quran and Sunnah, and those men, they interpret the Quran and Sunnah, but you don't follow them. You follow these handful of men who are interpreting the Quran and the Sunnah, and you follow that. But now when we compare men in terms of knowledge, there's no comparison. Al-Tahawi and Ibn Abi al-Iz, there's no comparison. Al-Tahawi and Albany, there's no comparison. Al-Tahawi and Bin Baz, there's no comparison. Al-Tahawi and Ibn Uthaymeen, there's no comparison, right? There is no equality between none of them in terms of knowledge, in terms of closeness to the Salaf, because Al-Tahawi was from the Salaf. But here are these latter generations, like Ibn al-Iz, who came 400 years later. He's saying Al-Tahawi, who learned from the Salaf, not only learned from the Salaf, learned from the top scholars of his time among the Salaf. And his chain is a golden chain back to the Prophet ﷺ. And here's this guy coming 400 years later, correcting Imam Al-Tahawi. And the belief of Imam Al-Tahawi was consistent with all those scholars up to that 8th century, even the scholars in the 8th century, which I will show you, like Al-Ghaznawi, who didn't believe what Ibn Abi al-Iz believed and refuted those ideas. But all of these scholars were all wrong, and these handful of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scholars, they were all right. And all of the great scholars of the Salaf, all of the great scholars of the Khalaf and Nawawi, all of them were misguided in the creed. Do you see what it leads to? And the basis to establish that misguidance is that we don't follow, no matter who it is, we follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Well, these were the ones who conveyed the Quran and the Sunnah. The very books you're reading to get the Quran and the Sunnah were written and transmitted by the ones you say didn't know Quran and Sunnah. I want you to think about that. When you're looking at these people like Ibn Abi al-Is, the very ones who he say didn't follow Quran and Sunnah were the ones whom he acquired the Quran and the Sunnah from their route. They were the ones who preserved the Quran and the Sunnah. They were the best of those who preserved the Quran and Sunnah. And you got the Quran and Sunnah from them. You read their books and then say all of them were wrong. But your reliance is on their work. I just want you to think about the assertion that they're making and the claim that they're making. Go ahead.
As for the word jihad,
I'm sorry. So keep going back. So keep in mind, this is the way they refute the scholars. This is their way. It is not consistent because they don't do the same thing, right? So listen, I want you to go back. Go back when he starts two word. He said, he's talking about words. He said, فَالْأَلْفَاظُ الشَّرْعِيَّةُ صَحِيَّةُ الْمَعَانِي سَلِيمَةٌ مِنَ الِاحْتِمَالَاتِ الْفَاسِدَةِ. Right? So he said that the words that came in the Quran and the Sunnah have correct meanings, and they're free of any false interpretations. So that's my translation. So somewhere around in your book, read that.
all these meanings are ruled out with respect to Allah Ta'ala. This is the reason none of these words have been used in reference to Allah Ta'ala in the Quran or
Right.
Sunnah.
Right.
The words used in the text have correct meanings to them.
The
They
words used in the text
have correct meanings to them.
here, the text meaning the text of the Quran and Sunnah. That's what's meant. So it says فَالْأَلْفَاظُ الشَّرْعِيَّةُ, meaning the religious terminology, meaning the words that are mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, sahihatul ma'ani, they have correct meanings. Is that clear from that text? So when he say text, he's not meaning the book, he means the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, go ahead.
They are free from any kind of confusion or guile. Therefore, one must not use terms other than the ones used in the text of the Quran or Sunnah when it comes to affirming or negating something
Right,
about
now
Allah
stop.
Ta'ala.
Listen to the contradiction. He's blaming Al-Tahawi, right, about terms he used when he said that Allah is clear of hudud, wal-ghayat, wal-arkan, wal-a'dha, wal-adawat, right? لا تهويه جهة الجهة الست كسائر مبتدعات. He says, don't use these terms. That's not in the Quran and that's not in the Sunnah, right? Pay attention. And y'all all will be familiar with this. Okay, we only use what is in the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay. Ya Ibn Abi al-Is. You only use words in the Quran and Sunnah. Show me in the Quran and the Sunnah where it says Tawheedu Uluhiyya, Tawheedu Rububiyya, Tawheedu Uluhiyya, Tawheedu Asma wa Sifat. Give me one verse in the Quran that says those terms. Give me one hadith of the Prophet that says those terms. Don't exist. The Prophet knew nothing about Tawheedu Rububiyya, Tawheedu Uluhiyya, Tawheedu Asma wa Sifat. Oneness of lordship, oneness of lordship, oneness of godhood, worship, oneness of names and attributes. You'll never find a companion. You'll never find a follower of the companion, a follower of the followers, the generation after that, the generation after that, the generation after that, the generation after that, until the time of Ibn Taymiyyah, your sheikh, Ibn Abi Aiz's sheikh. That's when those terms came about. Before that, the Muslim scholars, all of them, from all the way back from that time up, they didn't use those terms. You will not find them dividing Tawheed into three types. So I thought you don't use words that are not in the Quran and the Sunnah, or terms that are not in the Quran and the Sunnah. You made those terms. No Sahaba ever said that Tawheed is three types: Tawheedul Rububiyyah, Tawheedul Uluhiyyah, Tawheedul Asma wa Sifat. None of the Tabi'een said that. None of the Atba' Tabi'een said that. None of the Khalaf. You find Imam al-Nawawi, who was before Ibn Taymiyyah, in Damascus. Everyone knows Imam al-Nawawi. Imam al-Nawawi talked about Aqidah. Imam al-Nawawi wrote that. Show me where Imam al-Nawawi ever said Tawheed is Tawheedul Rububiyyah, Tawheedul Uluhiyyah, Tawheedul Asma wa Sifat. And he was a great scholar in Damascus where y'all were living. So is this, I thought you said you don't use terms. So why is it valid for you to use terms that are not in the Quran and Sunnah, but Al-Tahawi is wrong for using terms that are not mentioned in the text? But you can. And his terms were used by all the scholars who came before him, scholars, and scholars who came after him. Before him, the scholars used, like Abu Hanifa, like Ash-Shafi, like Malik. They used these terms in their itim, right? And all the scholars after them, like Al-Bayhaqi, right? Like Ibn Furak, like Imam al-Qushayri, like al-Juwayni, like al-Ghazali, like Imam al-Nawawi, and I can go on and on and on and on. And then even while you come with these ideas, the scholars after you still didn't accept your ideas, and they still use these same terms up to today. You know, remember that Arsenio Hall show? Remember he had a section on that show, he used to go, things that make you go, That was a song, remember that? Things that make you go, Go ahead.
As for the word jihad, direction, it may imply.
He's talking about jihad because Al-Tahawi said, La tahwihi al-jihatu sittu. Allah is not contained by the six directions, right? Kasa'ir mubtada'at, like all of the originated things. Go ahead.
It may imply something existent or non-existent.
All right, stop. وَأَمَّا اللَّفْظُ الْجِهَةِ فَقَدْ يُرَادْ بِهِ مَا هُوَ مَوْجُودٌ وَقَدْ يُرَادْ بِهِ مَا هُوَ مَعْدُومٌ. Now this is really crazy, all right? But this is their belief, subhanallah. Direction, al-jihah, he said it could mean something that is mawjood, existent. And it can mean something that is ma'doom, non-existence. So now pay attention to this. You have an existent direction and a non-existent direction. Are y'all listening? Highlight that or write it in your notes because you don't have the book. So he mentions this. You have a non-existent direction and a non-existent direction. I know this is going to go over all of our heads, right? But don't worry, just follow. Because most of the Salafi people, and especially the common people, they don't understand what is being said. His stuff doesn't even make no sense. But we're going to clarify it for you. So that's what he said. That's very important. They believe in direction, but there's a created direction that exists, and there's a non-created direction that is non-existent. There's a created direction that is existing, right? That is real. You know it. And then there's a non-created direction that is non-existent. It's non-created, غير مخلوق, and it's ma'doom, and it's non-existing, but it's a direction. Okay, right. Does that make any sense to anyone? I mean, obviously somebody, because they wrote it. There is a direction that is mawjood, but it's only for al-makhluk, the created thing. It's existing, and it's for created things only. Then there is another direction that is non-existent, and it is for that which is uncreated, which they mean by that Allah. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but when the mind wants to establish absurdities, they'll go through anything. Go ahead.
It is well known that there is nothing in existence except the Creator and the created.
All right, follow. Al-ma'lum annahu la mawjuda illa al-khaliq wal-makhluq. It's well known that there is only the creator and the created. All right? We submit. Go ahead.
Hence, if by direction one means an existent other than Allah Ta'ala, it would be something created.
Right? So if you meant by jihad, direction, amrun mawjudun ghayrullah ta'ala kana makhluqa. If it means something other than Allah, and it's a existent matter, and it's other than Allah, it has to be a creation. Why? Because you only have Allah and the creator, right? Go ahead. You have a creator and the creation. Go ahead.
As such, it could not encompass Allah Ta'ala, for no created being can encompass him.
Right.
Exalted is he above that.
Right. So if it's created, that it can't encompass Allah, right? So Allah is free from being encompassed by his creation. This stuff is insane. Go ahead.
According to the author, if by the word direction one means something non-existent.
Okay, so he gave you amrun mawjud aw amrun adamiyun. Adamiyun means a non-existent matter, and amrun mawjud means an existent matter, right? So that means if you mean by direction, amrun adamiyun, a non-existent matter, right? Because we talked about the existent matter, that has to be a created thing, right? Now we're talking about a non-existent matter. Go ahead.
That is, beyond the bounds of this world.
وَهُوَ مَا فَوْقَ الْعَالَمِ. That is now beyond existence. Now they're changing the word. وَهُوَ مَا فَوْقَ الْعَالَمِ means what is above the earth, what is above the world. Al-alam means the universe, the world. So this amrun adamiyun, this non-existent matter, is above the world. So once you get above the arsh, this stuff is foolish, but I'm going to show you how foolish it is. So above the arsh is this non-existent matter, right? It's the throne. So I want you to follow. Above the throne is a non-existent matter. What is above the world, the universe? Go ahead.
Then there is nothing there except Allah Ta'ala.
I'm sorry, this stuff is hilarious. So above the world is only Allah. And this is a non-existent direction, a non-existent matter. Once you get above the alam, right? And that is al-arsh, to them is the seal of the alam, right? So once you get above the arsh, it's non-existent and nothing is there except Allah. But it's non-existent. But Allah is in a non-existent location and direction. But Allah exists. But He's in a non-existent direction and place. He's mawjood. That's obligatory. Okay, go ahead. I'm stopping slow so you can listen to what is being said to you. Right? Go ahead.
Taking direction in this sense, if we say that Allah Ta'ala is in a certain direction or space, it is correct. For
So
it means,
فإذا قيل إنه في جهة بهذا الاعتبار فهو صحيح. So if you say Allah is in a direction by saying he's in this non-existent direction, which is above the world, and that's the direction of Allah, and it's a non-existent direction where the creator, who is wajibul wujud, a necessary existence, he exists in a non-existent direction, then this is correct. Okay. All right, go ahead.
for it means that he is above the world, beyond the limits of creation, and beyond everything.
This translation is horrible. That translation is horrible. He says, أنه فوق العالم, right? He's above the world, the universe. حيث انتهت المخلوقات, where the creation ends. فهو فوق الجميع, he's above all the creation. So the creation ends at this point, and Allah, that's where he exists. I'm going to show you how crazy this is. I'm going to show you, I'm going to tell you something that's going to trip you out, that just because you got to explain this part. Go ahead.
Those who negate direction, those who desire by that to deny that Allah Ta'ala is transcendent and above the creation, use as their evidence that all directions and space are created.
That's the belief of Ahl Sunnah. That's what Al-Tahawi said when he said, لا تهويه الجهة ست كسائر مبتدآت. المبتدآت مخلوقات, all of the creation. All creation are contained by the sixth direction, whether it's above, below, to the right, to the left, in front, and behind. Every creation has one of these six directions that relate to it. And Allah is not in direction because Allah is not like the creation. So that is the belief of Ahl Sunnah. But the Wahhabiyya, and they got this from Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Abi al-Iz and the likes, they believe, no. All directions are not created. There are created directions, and then there are non-created directions. There are existent directions, then there are non-existent directions. So, right, go ahead.
But Allah Ta'ala must have been before any kind of direction or space.
And this is Ahl Sunnah. وَأَنَّهُ كَانَ قَبْلَ الْجِهَادِ. We believe that Allah existed before jihad, because jihad's directions are all created. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi, I'm commenting and explaining, he said this, and this is true of Ahl Sunnah, the Ash'ari and Maturidi. We say directions are created. Allah existed before directions, and he does not change, so he's not attributed with directions, right? Whether those directions are existent or non-existent that you got in your mind, right? Allah is clear of those directions, right? And Allah existed. Where did they get this from? They get it from the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah said, وَهُوَ الْأَوَّلِ, he is al-awwal, meaning the one, la bidayata li wujudihi, he has no beginning to his existence. The Prophet ﷺ said in the Sahih Hadith related by Imam al-Bukhari, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ, Allah existed and there was nothing else. Not directions, not place, not time, nothing, only Allah. This is what we call al-azal. Naam. So this is Ahl Sunnah. He's right. Ahl Sunnah say that, but they negate that. Go ahead.
Moreover, if Allah Ta'ala is in a direction of space, it would mean that a part of the world is eternal, or that there was a time when Allah Ta'ala was above space and then entered into it.
Not above space. This translation is horrible, right? He said, if one speaks of jihad, it necessitates al-qawl bi kidimi shay'in min al-alam. If you say that Allah is in a direction, what that necessitates is the eternity of a part of the world, which is al-jihad, direction. You're saying directions are eternal with Allah, right? وأنه كان مستغنيا عن الجهة ثم صار فيها. Then what that also necessitates that Allah at one point was free of need of direction. Then when direction came, he became in need of it. And this is blasphemous, right? Go ahead.
These arguments are advanced to show that Allah Ta'ala is not in anything created,
Right.
whether we call it space, direction, or anything else.
Right.
This is true.
Go ahead.
But the fact is that
So they agree. This is the belief of Ahl Sunnah. Now here comes this addition that none of the Salaf ever said this stuff. Listen, these are people who claim to follow the Salaf. You show me any one of the Salaf. I challenge any of you. Show me one companion. Definitely you're not going to find the Prophet saying this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Find one companion. Find one follower. Find one follower of the follower who said this stuff. Ever. Find one companion, one follower of the follower, the minimum definition of a Salaf, right? One of them who said this stuff. Then extend it, go to the year 300, so you can make it longer. You can add Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, and Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, all of those big scholars of hadith, and one of them who said what he's getting ready to say. You will not find it nowhere. But they're following the Salaf. Listen to this stuff. Go ahead.
But the fact is that space is not something existing, but it is only a point of view. Amar-i tibari. There is no doubt that spaces or directions, jihad, are boundless. And what is not in the boundless does not exist.
You heard that? ولا شك أن الجهاد لا نهاية لها. أعوذ بالله. Directions have no ending, no extreme end. And whatever is in those directions and has an end is not existing. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Now you find any of the Salaf who says some stuff like that. Since we Salafi, they say, I'm on the minhaj of the Salaf. Call Allah, call Rasulullah. Show me where call Allah, call Rasulullah, that stuff. Show me anywhere. I mean, one hadith, one verse of the Quran that says that. One statement of a Sahabi, one statement of a Tabi, one statement of a Tabi, any of them. Any of Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and Nasa'i, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmed, Abu Hanifa, any of their students. Show me any of them who said that. Crickets. Okay, where are my Salafi people? Can you give me someone who said that? Show me, put in. I know y'all hiding in there. Put it up. Show me. Give me a statement of the companions or the followers or any of them who said that. And remember, he said before this, we don't use terms that were not mentioned in the text. Remember that statement? Show me these terms or anything close to them in the text. Forget the term. I'm going to give you the term. I'm going to ignore that you say you don't use terms that are not in the text. I'm going to ignore that. Show me anything close to these terms in the text. Anything that bears that meaning. Are y'all following what I'm saying in this? This is Salafi 101. Are y'all following what I'm saying in this? This is his words. So you can't say Imam Amin is making it up. We're actually reading their scholar words. This is the most famous commentary that they use. If you go to any of their places, whenever they talk about the creed of Tahawi, of Al-Tahawi, Al-Aqidah Tahawiyah, this is the main text that they use. Every other text is based on this text. Al-Albany's notes, Bin Baz's notes, Ibn Uthaymin's notes, Fawzan's notes, all of it is based upon this. Now, go ahead. So that's the question. We got the text. No more hiding from us. No more telling us we follow Quran and Sunnah. That's not in the Quran and that's not in the Sunnah. So you don't follow Quran and Sunnah. You have your own ideas, which contradict all the ideas of the scholars, because you mentioned it. You mentioned what the scholars said. And we agree. That's what Al-Tahawi said. That's what others said. And you say, no, 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 no. We got this other terminology that we came up with that's going to justify our vile creed. Go ahead.
What the
I
author
hope
states.
you're following all this. I know you might have to listen to this over and over again. But this stuff is so now remember, so we're upon the Quran and the Sunnah. Qala Allah wa qala Rasulullah. This ain't qala Allah and this ain't qala Rasulullah. This ain't qala Sahaba. This ain't qala Tabi'un. This ain't qala none of them. Not Shafi, not Malik, not Ahmed, not Abu Hanifa, not Al-Tahawi, not Al-Bayhaqi, not Al-Nawawi, not Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, not any of them. Go ahead.
What the author stated. He is not bound by the six directions of space, as all created beings are. Is true in the sense that nothing
Wait a
created
minute.
can
So
encompass
it's
him.
true. It's true. لا تهوي الجهة الست كسائر المبتدعات. He said, هو حق. It's true if he means this. It's true. It's not just true and stop. It's true if you consider this. Wait a minute. He said, هذا ذكر بيان عقيدة أهل السنة of the creed of Ahl Sunnah. You said it's true if you consider. What happened? Huwa haq and stop. No, it's not true because we got to put our stuff in here first. It's true if you consider this. Go ahead. Consider what? Go ahead.
On the contrary, he encompasses all and is above all. This is what the author
Wait a minute.
means.
It's true. It's true if you consider bi'etibar what?
It is true in the sense that nothing created can encompass him.
Right? So it's true if you mean, and let me show you what he means by that. It's true. You got to follow the other argument. Very important that you follow. It's true if you mean created directions because they can't encompass him. Right? Right? Go ahead.
On the contrary, he encompasses all and is above all.
So he encompasses, this is really kufr. This is kufr. When you talk about, this is not only wrong, it's blasphemous. He encompasses the directions, the whole world, and he's above it. A'udhu billah. This is kufr. This is jismiyah. You listen, because the world is not flat. They discovered that, right? So here they saying Allah surrounds, encompasses the world, and he's above it. A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. This is so much ugly kufr. This is ugly kufr. And this is, and this stuff is ugly kufr. Listen, you have the creator surrounding the creation, above the creation, in a non-existent place and direction. A'udhu billah. This is so ugly. Go ahead. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah.
This is what the author means by this statement, as later he states.
Wait a minute, right? He said, وَهَذَا الْمَعْنَى هُوَ الَّذِي أَرَادَهُ الشَّيْخ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ. This is what? Imam, this is, now he's interpreted what Al-Tahawi meant. No other interpreter of Al-Tahawi that didn't follow them said that. None of them. And I mentioned Al-Ghaznawi. Go back. We don't have time. We have to wait till tomorrow. Okay, go ahead. Let's finish this out. We'll stop. And then we'll come back tomorrow. Now you understand why I'm so hard on that Salafi creed. This stuff is ugly kufr. Even the kids don't have such craziness, right? You know the cartoons, they come up with some weird stuff for the imagination. This one, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is way out there. Go ahead. He said, I'm going to need therapy after this. Go ahead.
This is what the author means by this statement, as he later states, Allah Ta'ala encompasses all and is above all. When we put these words together with the above sentence, it becomes clear that what he wants to say is that Allah Ta'ala is not surrounded or encompassed by anything as created beings are. On the contrary, he encompasses everything and is above everything. But there are two more observations that must be made concerning this statement.
We'll stop there. Now, you listen to that. All right. Now let's bring it back because that's a lot of confusion. Let's bring it back to earth or bring it back to sound minds, right? Here's their belief. Let's get the belief of Ahl Sunnah. Huwa al-haq, full stop. Not if you consider, not with this possibility, none of that. Full stop. This is the belief of Ahl Sunnah. Allah exists without a place and a direction before creating place and direction, and he exists as he always exists after creating place and direction. Allah does not change. Only thing that changes created things. Hence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not something you can imagine in your mind. Mahma tasawarta bibalik, fallahu bi khilafi dhalik. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah is different from that. Laysa kamithlihi shay. Nothing at all resembles Allah in no way. That's the belief of Ahl Sunnah. Allah mawjudun bila makan wala jiha wala masafa bainahu wa baina khalqih. There is no distance between Allah and his creation. Allah exists without a direction and a place because al-makan wal-jiha wal-masafa wa-makhluqat, all of the place, the direction, the distance, the creations, all of them are created. They came from a state of non-existence into a state of existence, and they have no effect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear? Is that clear? That's the belief of the Ash'aris, Maturidis. That's the belief of Ahl Sunnah. Is that clear? Everyone understands that point. I want to pause, make sure everyone understood the correct belief. Did y'all get it? Please, I want to make sure when I explain the correct belief, everyone heard it and understood. That's the belief of the Ash'aris, and that's the belief of the Sufis. That's the belief of the Maturidis, the Shafis, Hanafis, Malikis, and the noble of the Hanabila. That's clear. Tayyib. Here's what Ibn Abi al-Iz and the Salafi are trying to tell you. That's the belief of the Sunnis. They're saying the directions, they don't have an end. And Allah created the creation. And there are created directions and non-created directions, non-existent directions. There are existent directions and non-existent directions. The existent directions are created. Then above these created directions are non-existent directions. And that non-existent direction is above the created directions, and that's where Allah is at. That's their belief. But those created positions were not existing. But the direction of non-existent direction always exists with Allah. It has no end. It is eternal with Allah, a non-existent direction. But there was no world. So now Allah, after creating the world is beneath this non-existent direction, and that's where Allah is after the existence of the world. So he only became in this non-existent direction once the world was created, because there was no world, so there was no direction. created direction. But when he created the world, there became created directions, and he remained existing in a non-created direction. Did that become clear? I just explained what he said. Is that clear for you? Do you understand? I know it don't make no sense, but that's what he's saying. Did you follow that? Are y'all with me? I'm getting ready to rip the shreds of people who say Aqidah is not important. Now, you hear this thing they always accuse me of, and anyone like me, they say they are, this is what they say about us. They are, Imam Amin and his boys, they are fighting, they are engaged in Aqidah wars. And then they go laugh out loud, right? Have you ever heard this said about us? We doing Aqidah wars. Ha, 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 right? I want to ask you a question. After listening to this today and reading this text, it's not me, it's the text, we're reading it. Is there a distinct difference between what they believe and what Ahl Sunnah believe? Do you see that this is two different beliefs? Is that clear? This is two different beliefs, totally. We do not believe the same thing at all. Is this clear? So all of you people who believe, oh, it's just anything, stop talking about Aqidah, huh? Did you hear what he just described? To us, such description is kufr. It's not Islam. It is not permissible to believe that about Allah at all. And even those scholars who didn't consider the people who hold this belief kufr, they said they're confused, they have this, they said this is an ugly, vile innovation. Any way you cut it, if you say it's an ugly, vile innovation that's not permissible to believe, or you go to the sentence and say it's kufr to believe that. In any case, that we do not believe the same thing. I don't care how you say it. At the end result is the same. No one can believe this. It's not valid. If you want to give an excuse, they say they la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, they're confused, we can't believe it, but we're not going to say they're kuffar. Some people said that. Fine, but it's definitely not permissible to believe that, right? Yes. Okay. Those who said this is kufr. Okay. All right. At the end of the day, it's still not permissible to believe, right? Let's make that clear. No matter what you say, that's not permissible to believe. So at the end of the day, if someone is teaching people that, we're obligated to refute that idea. We have no choice. It's not the same. You cannot believe that. So if someone is telling you that, it's obligatory for us to explain the correct creed. We have to, because that's the result. Is what I just mentioned totally clear? So this, if you want to call it Aqidah wars, we have to fight it. We cannot remain silent about this. We have to explain. And worse, that people don't even know that's what's being said to them. Because if they understood that's what's being said, they would think it's ridiculous. Because if your kids came and told you the same thing, you'd be like, son, daughter, this is foolishness. That's why you need living teachers to explain. This is their works. No one can say he made it up. I gave it to you in Arabic, and even with that terrible English translation, with that they did in Saudi Arabia, they did it. Nevertheless, there's the book. I'll give it to anyone to explain it. So there's the book. Here's the text. It's in Arabic, published by Al-Maktab Al-Islami. They're publishing. This is where Albany had a partnership with the owner of this publishing company. It's their books. That's what they put out. This is what they said. His name is on it. Nasiruddin Al-Albani. Muhammad Nasiruddin Al-Albani. This is their stuff. Can't say Imam Amin made it up. You said it. This is what you promote. And tomorrow I'm going to show you what Al-Albani said. Is Al-Albani's book, and it's published by Zuhair Shawish. Maktab Al-Islamiyya, same thing. There's the publishing company. Al-Maktab Al-Islami. Al-Maktab Al-Islami. This is their books. And Imam Amin didn't make this stuff up. This is their book. Just in case this is too much here, here's the small version. This is too much for you. A lot of extra reading. Here, I'm going to summarize it for you. This is their stuff. And this has been Baz. This is what they say. So, anyone who listens to this stuff and at the end of this still talking about this is the creed of the Salafi is insane. Yet, you listen to the contradiction in it. We only use the terms of the text. Show me the stuff in the text. I challenge you. Show me anywhere in the Quran, anywhere in the Sunnah, any of the Sahaba, any of the followers of the followers. Khairu nasi qarni, thumma alladhina yalunahum, thumma alladhina yalunahum. The best people of my generation, then those who come after them, then those come after them. Show me these terms. Now, in the Quran, number one, you won't find. In the Sunnah, you won't find. Among the Sahaba, you won't find. Among the followers of the Sahaba, you won't find. Among the followers of the followers, you won't find. So I thought you said you only use the text, call Allah wa call Rasulullah. What's that? But you censor, correct, y'all do agree he corrected Imam Al-Tahawi, right? He said Imam Al-Tahawi shouldn't have used those, and I'll show you more, they say. But use our innovated words. Don't use your innovated words. Use our innovated words. Even though others have said your words, don't use them. Use the ones we said that no one else has ever said. Now you know why we teach Aqidah. And now you know why I'm so hard on Sunnis who remain silent. So those Sunni Muslims who know this nonsense and don't tell our people. And then, worse, those who tell our people and use the correct knowledge to try to control us with racism. So you got the correct creed, but now you're using the correct creed and giving us what you want to have instead of letting us learn and armor up and know the knowledge well so we can go defend our people and explain the truth for them because they're being hit with this disease the most. This disease of corrupt creed is spreading in the Black community more than anywhere else. But while you out in the suburbs chilling with all the nice books that you don't share with the Black people, knowing the truth and leave the Black people to suffer with this nonsense. Yeah, so both needs to be censored. Those who remain silent and those who hide the truth. But guess what, guys? Them days is up. As long as I live for the rest of my life, I'm going to clarify for my people that which you hide from them. We don't need you. The days of us being afraid to tell you you're unjust, because if we tell you you're unjust, we might not learn the religion, are over. We don't need you. We don't need you. We can do it on our own. Yes, the Black man has the ability to read, to write, to understand, to listen, to analyze, to critically think. Black people are not stupid. We don't need you. And if you want to be brotherhood, stop doing that stuff. And I wouldn't have to say what I'm saying. because we should have been known this stuff 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We shouldn't have spent all these years going through this while people are using us and abusing us, and the truth is right in their hands. And Allah knows best. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. And tomorrow, there's more where that comes from. So go get your aspirins and Tylenol and Aleve and be okay. Have plenty of water. We'll start tomorrow. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.